Hello, and thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and Youth. My name is Dr. Sylvia Black, licensed real estate broker with affordable homes and apartments. I'm licensed to preach and ordained as a minister, and I have my master's degree in sacred theological divinity. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and Youth. You can hit me up on Facebook at Dr. Sylvia Black. You can hit me up on our YouTube address at Highway to Heaven Church or S Block 3001. And thank you again for joining me. This show airs every Wednesday right here on Time Warner Public Access TV Channel 20. Wednesdays 6:30 to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 12:30 to 1 in the afternoon. And I want to thank you again for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You. My name is Dr. Sylvia Black, and I am your host. Now today I'd like to talk to you about a real estate book that I have written. It's a real estate book that I have written, and it's entitled Tenants' Rights versus Slumlords. Win in Housing Court. Tenants' Rights versus Slumlords. Win in Housing Court. Okay. Yeah. Do you as a tenant feel that you have a right to live in a safe and decent place? That you have a right to have privacy without being harassed in your apartment or your house that you're renting from the landlord? That you have a right to live in a place that is habitable, safe, that does not endanger the life of you or your children or any of the family members who reside with you? And that includes the inside of the house where you dwell, as well as the exterior of the house, considering, for example, the porch, the backyard, the outside of the house, the siding, the driveway, the lawn, if you have one. And the answer to that, my brothers and sisters, is yes. Yes, you do have a right to live in a safe and decent place to live. There are a lot of landlords that come to Buffalo that I realize that come here, buy property, and go back to the big city that they're from, and go back to their job. And then they wonder why the tenants are not paying any rent. Well, the tenants are not paying any rent because you live 500 or 700 or 900 miles away. And are you going to quit your job one day or just leave work and come out here and sue me for not paying my rent? No. So more than likely, why is your building going down, landlord? Why is it deteriorating to the point where nothing is getting fixed? Because you are not here to manage it. And management companies must be licensed in order to manage property, but a lot of them are not. And therefore they don't know what they're doing, or they have too much on their plate. And I can give you some names. Okay? A lot of landlords have too much on their plate, or they don't know what they're doing, or they don't consider tenants as human beings. And that's very unfair. You take my money to pay your bills, which is considered rent. And in exchange, I'm supposed to have a decent and habitable place to live. You're not supposed to come in my apartment when I'm not here, unless I give you my permission to do so. You have no right to harass me. And you have, by law, the landlord is required to provide all the tenants that they rent to a decent place to live. And this is called under the warranty of habitability. Okay, and if the landlord does not provide you with a decent, safe place to live, which does not endanger your life, health, or safety, and we're going to talk about some of those things in detail, then you have a right to sue your landlord in court while you're living in the house. And this talks about, your rights as a tenant, okay, and how you can eventually sue your landlord in court, take over the management of the building, move the landlord away from active management of his own building now, okay, and manage it, turn it into a low-income co-op, and own the building that you live in. Now, isn't that amazing? Isn't that fascinating? And it's all legal. It's all legal. There are so many slumlords out here in Buffalo that in the West New York region They come out here and they think that they can manage property from 1,000 miles away. Well, you can't. You know, and even with students are the ones that really destroy your property when they move out. Now, this book is available on lulu.com, Lulu.com. And I'm available for public engagements. Like I said, I'm a licensed real estate broker with affordable homes and apartments. So I know what I'm talking about. I wrote this book a couple of years ago, and I rewrote it because it needed to be. This is the second edition, and it was part of another book, but this is actually volume 2, I believe, of the 2-volume book. So it's a lot smaller, and it just gets right to the point. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to get right to the point, and we're going to talk about as much as we can talk about today. And whatever we don't talk about, you can always give our sister a holler at one of the sources that I will tell you again towards the end of the broadcast. Now, what are your rights as a tenant? You may not think that you have any rights as a tenant, but you do have rights as a tenant. For example, you have a right not to be harassed, like I said earlier, by your landlord. You have a right to privacy. You have a right to live in an apartment or a house that is free from dangerous conditions into your life, health, and or safety. If you had a decent place to live, your performance on your job might be better, might be drastically improved if you didn't have to come home to rats and roaches crawling all over your house. You know what I mean? Holes in the walls, lack of heat or hot water. Okay, and we're going to go over some of the other violations right now. No heat or hot water, no lights in the hallway, just to name a few. Okay. Could cause the individuals, to perform elsewhere unsatisfactory or below standards. And I can understand, especially if you don't get enough sleep at night, if there's a whole bunch of activity going on around where you live at. Jobs are hard to find as it is and harder to keep. But having to come home to a dilapidated building or a house that looks ugly on the outside is an embarrassment. Okay? And it's not an ideal situation for a child. Okay, problems can get so bad that the tenants will be the ones who will suffer, especially those who are at a disadvantage. For example, the elderly, those on a fixed income, people who have recently lost their jobs, who are on unemployment right now, and children that inevitably get sick from the violations that they're living in. There was a situation where the landlord, and I say the exterior of the building too, the porch, that has to be attended to, although a lot of landlords do not do that. Okay, there are companies that can test your house for lead-based paint. More than likely, if your house is built before 1974, I think it was, you have lead-based paint in your house. And all houses are supposed to be freshly painted, everything. The porch is supposed to be painted, everything is supposed to be painted over, okay? And then that would give you the fresh paint, and then that would relieve get rid of the lead-based paint. There was a story, I don't know if it was in Africa or here, it was with an African family, a young little girl, 2 or 3, she used to play out on the porch all the time. And the girl suddenly got sick, and they didn't know how she got sick. All of a sudden, they took her to the hospital, and they could not figure out what it was. After the girl died, then they figured out that it was lead-based paint that she was playing with. She would always be on the porch playing, and you know how kids are, they play hand to mouth, they don't know how to wipe their hands off or wash their hands before they, touch something. You touch it with the hand and then, hand them out. So she died from lead-based paint poisoning, and of course, yes, the lawsuit ensued and they got money, And if the landlord don't have no money, then guess what? I'm taking your houses, as run down as they may be. Okay, landlords should use the rent monies collected to fix up the buildings, but a lot of times they don't. Okay, they take it and they put it in their pocket. Okay, which is not an ideal situation. Okay, living in a building that is crumbling down. Okay, let me get, wait a minute, where am I at? Living in a building that's crumbling down is not safe to live in. Okay? Excuse me. Okay, tenants should not become afraid to speak up or take action in your place of residence. The first way of communication, if your landlord is not in town, the first thing you need to do is contact the health department. The downtown, go downtown and tell them, or call them up and say, I'd like for you to come and inspect my property. I think I have lead-based paint. That I have violations in this house, and I'd like to get an inspection report, so that when I go to take my landlord to court, I can the judge can force him to pay, make the repairs. Okay, that's the first thing you need to do. Get a copy of that. What you need to do is create a paper trail. Create a paper trail. Okay, and what that means is that everything that you get must be in writing. It should be in writing. Okay, and I also found out the one thing that we have our Android phones, right? Push that record button on that Android phone, put it in your pocket, and go knock on the landlord's door and talk to him. There's an app that you can download that records all the conversations that you talk. So if you download this app, and I don't know what it is offhand, but it allows you to record, I think it's Call X, CALL_X, and you download or whatever, upload this app on your phone, and then every time you talk to somebody on the phone, those calls are being recorded, and those calls can be used in court as evidence. Yes, they can. A contract is when two people agree to something. When you move into an apartment that the landlord owns, the landlord is saying, okay, I'm agreeing to provide you with a decent and safe place to live that will not endanger your life, health, or safety. You as the tenant, on the other hand, is saying that I agree to live in your premises that you're renting me, and I agree to pay you rent every month, providing that you provide me with a decent and safe place to live that does not endanger my life or my family's life, health, or safety. Right? Now, when that contract is breached is when you have violations in your house. All of a sudden, in the wintertime, now you don't have no heat. The boiler is knocking and whatnot, and it's working overtime trying to get that heat up, but it's just not working. It's an old boiler, and it's about to go. You call your landlord up, or you try to contact him. What do? Maybe he's not even reachable on the weekends. So now you got to go out and you got to buy heaters, okay? Anything that you purchase, keep those receipts, okay? Write letters to your landlord. Go to the library, use a computer for free. Call me up, I'll meet you, I'll show you how to do it, okay? Because I think this is definitely one of my ministries. I was a tenant activist in New York City, and we would sit in housing court. I'd have me a table and sit right there in housing court, and there would be a bunch of others also, and we would help. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a tenant activist. And what I would do is I would advise you. I'd have my book, whatever book I would have, tenants' rights, or whatever book I would have in pamphlets that I was given by other sources and whatnot, names, addresses, and phone numbers that I could also give you. And I would sit at my little table and have my little sign that said what I do. I'm a licensed real estate broker, but I'm also a tenant activist, right? See, I'm working with you as a tenant. Now, I haven't tried that in court, in downtown court. I don't know. I mean, I probably could go to court and then just show up and start talking to people or whatever. But there was so many people going to court in the Bronx, it was like pathetic. So, and I helped quite a few people, See, one thing you have to remember, there's so many things that you have to remember, so many things. I'm trying to go in order here, but there's so much to talk about, and I know I'm not going to be able to talk about it all in one meeting. Okay, so if if you want to find out more about it right now, get a copy of my book, Tenants' Rights versus Slumlords, Winning Housing Court, available on lulu.com. You can always call me, email me at sblack3001@gmail.com. Okay, email me and whatnot, and I'm going to be holding a forum somewhere, a meeting, a tenants' rights meeting somewhere soon. Okay, so if you email me, I get enough people that are interested in coming to the tenants' rights meeting, then it will be held soon. But you should not be afraid to speak up to your landlord. I know you probably are, because your landlord has probably tried to make you afraid to say something to him, for whatever reason or another. Okay? If you are afraid to talk to him, type up a letter. You're creating that paper trail. Get you a folder, go to the dollar store, get you a folder, and, keep everything in those papers. Make sure you date them, keep them in chronological order. Now, did you know as a tenant that you can actually take your landlord to court? You don't have to wait for him to take you to court. You can take him to court right now, okay? But there's that but. And somebody say, get the buts out the way. Okay? But, or however, okay, you must have the back rent. If you are suing him, now you say, okay, landlord, would you fix this for me? Okay, pay me the rent and I'll fix it. Here. And you come around, landlord don't fix nothing. Landlord, when you gonna fix something? Okay, pay me the rent and I'll fix it. Here, you pay him the rent and he don't fix nothing. So now, legally, you cannot withhold rent unless you get the permission from a judge. Right? So then what you need to do is, before that rent is due, then you go downtown and you file what is called an HP action. And I got sample forms in here. I have blank forms that you can get that the courts probably have as well. And remember, everything has to be signed by a judge. I have forms towards the back of the book that show you how to, all you got to do is fill in the blanks. And I can show you how to do that. Okay? Sometimes conditions are so bad in your building that you, like I said, you have to call the health department, and that's the first step. Okay? Then you send a letter to your landlord. Now, you don't have to tell them that you contacted the health department. You just list the conditions that are in your apartment that are not working. You could be anything at all, whatever it is that you're uncomfortable with, that you don't like. And you list it. Now you take your Android phone again, and you take pictures of everything. Then you go to the library's computer and you download it. And you can download them as a file and whatnot, and you just keep everything. That's your paper trail that you're creating. Okay? Now there are certain apartments, rent stabilization, for example, is a system that regulates rent, services, and evictions in privately owned buildings of 6 or more units. It doesn't mean that if you're in a house or in a two-family apartment building that you don't have rights. You just don't fall under the rent stabilization law. Now, rent stabilization and rent control are very strict. If you fall under one of those, then you will get more immediate attention. But you will get attention from if you live in a unit 5 or more units. Okay, but there are more stringent and strict rules for apartment buildings of 6 or more units. Okay, so now what this means is that the tenants are protected by law from being harassed by landlords, or we are all protected. But the Rent Control Board says this, that having your rents escalated to an unlimited height. See, if you're living in a house, your rent can start out at $700 and you can go to $750 next month. There's no rent stabilization law to prevent that. However, he has to justify that he's going up on that rent, and you can take him to court and force him to prove his case in court. Okay? If the landlord doesn't fix any repairs, then what you can do is you can ask the judge if I can pay my rent in the courts. Okay? If you're getting Section 8, call your Section 8 worker and tell her. And whatnot, the Section 8 will stop paying rent, and they know that the rent is there. You know, all they got to do is do the right thing. He's got to fix those buildings, those violations, and then he'll get his rent. Or if you're paying cash, if you get a Social Security check or whatever, you can say, look, you know, I like to be able to pay my rent into the courthouses. And he might just suggest that you pay it to the landlord. But you go in there with a strong mind. And I could be right there next to you, with you. And you say, you make up your mind, this is what I want, and I'm not going to let him talk me out of it. I would like to pay my rent in court. Because I don't want the landlord to get a dime of it until he fixes these repairs. And the judge may say, well, go ahead and give him the rent. And you say, well, Your Honor, I would like to pay my rent in the courts. Is that possible? You know, and then, you know, you find out from there. Well, yes, it is possible, but what you can do is go to the cashier and say, you know, this is what you're doing. I'm paying my rent for this building right here in court. They'll give you a receipt, and you pay it. You really don't need the judge's permission to do that. You just go and pay it. But you just make sure that they allocate it to where it's supposed to be allocated to. Okay? So basically what I'm doing is a general analysis, like a basic overview. If you have any questions, you please give me a call, give me a holler. Okay? Because right now I'm just talking about some general things. Okay? Most of the buildings out here don't fall under the rent stabilization or rent control law. Okay? And if you have a low rent, most of the rents are pretty much low out here. You have a high rent in New York. Now let me just explain to you something about what code violations are. A housing code violation is a condition in your house or apartment that you rent that poses a danger to you and your family's life, health, or safety. A housing code violation is any condition in the building in which you live that is danger to your life, health, or safety. Okay, I said that. Why did I repeat that? Okay. Okay. Uh, a housing code violation can include but not limited to, depending on the state that you live in, holes in the walls, lead-based paint issues, rodents, and where I come from, they call them rats and roaches, you know. Lack of heat or hot water, no electricity, or faulty fixtures, you know, the spark, you know what I mean? Broken windows, peeling linoleum. I mean, anything that is not, you know, you look at where you live at, you know what I mean? If you're tripping over the linoleum in your kitchen, that's a violation. You know, if you're not warm enough in your apartment, something is wrong. Either the house is not insulated or there's not enough heat coming up out of that furnace. You know, or it could be an old rundown furnace. Okay, now you all know where housing court is. The owner can be assessed fines and violations for not fixing things. So, but you have to make the person who can do something about it aware. So we have to stop complaining to ourselves. You know, I mean, yeah, it's okay to talk to each other about it, but in addition to that, take action. Sit down at that computer, take advantage of those free computers at the library. I do all the time. You'll find me at Jefferson Library, or you'll find me downtown, or you'll find me at Harlem Road Library. Okay, usually I go to Harlem Road, either not all the time, not every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They still open late until 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You might find me there on Wednesday or Thursday, or sometimes Monday. Okay, but I mostly hang out at Jefferson Library, and I'm taking advantage of those computers all the time. So if you want to talk about those housing violations, if you have an issue, you come to one of those libraries and you'll find me there, and we can sit down and talk. Sometimes, like I said, I go to Harlem, and sometimes I go downtown. Mostly like on Thursday nights, because they stay open until 8 o'clock on Thursday nights, and they have free movies there on Thursday nights. Let me tell you, downtown is where it's at. They got a lot of good stuff down there I'm going to tell you about. But if you need help, if you're facing conditions right now, you know, and see, Section 8 might be paying your rent. You know, how do you stop your rent from being paid? You call your Section 8 worker, and you tell her. You create that paper trail. That's you being your own private investigator. Okay, you send the landlord a letter. You sent the landlord a letter, you give him a couple of days to answer. If he doesn't answer, okay, now it's time to take further action. Okay, anything that you spend money on, keep receipts. Staple those receipts to those letters. Landlord, I asked you to fix this. Make sure you ask him first. And if you know where he lives or whatever, call him up on the phone and record that conversation. Mr. Landlord, Miss Landlord, I need you to come and fix this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then you document. I called the landlord on so-and-so date. I spoke to the landlord on so-and-so date. I told him about the condition in my house. He said, okay, he's going to fix it, or he said, or he just hung up, whatever. Okay? And you can continue to try him after, you know, a few times. Give him a little while. You know, don't harass the man, you know what I mean? You know, but, you know, try to get through to him, you know. Okay? Now, like I said, any money you spend, you take a picture of the before, the during, and the after, if you're going to fix something in your house. Okay? For example, if you buy a heater because you need to get some extra heat in there, you keep a receipt for that heater and you take a picture of that heater. Because, Your Honor, this is what I had to buy in order to keep my house warm. Because we have to sleep in the living room. We can't even sleep in the bedroom. Okay? And so, you know, an unsafe building, okay, it could be open, vacant, or unguarded, leaving room for squatters. Squatters are people who are tenants, illegal tenants, I guess you could say. Okay? So basically, you know, I'm just going over the general overview, and I'm going to do some specifics starting next week when we continue to talk about this book here. Tenants' Rights versus Slumlords, Win in Housing Court. Okay, I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to win in housing court. You're going to know the language. You need a copy of this book, actually, because the forms are in the back. These are samples, actually. And all you have to do is Xerox them, enlarge them, make copies of them. Or you can go to the courthouse downtown, and you can ask for copies. You can actually file a lawsuit in court. If you're a low income individual, you know, in other words, if you're, you know, Section 8 welfare, disability, stuff like that, you can go get help from legal aid. legal aid would be more than happy to help you. You know, if you have a dispossessed notice, the landlord is putting you out. He's retaliating against you because he don't want you complaining. He wants you living in those rundown conditions. And you know what I say to him, the landlord? I said, would you do this to your wife? Would you let your children live here under these conditions, Mr. Landlord? No, I don't think you would. And if you don't let your children live here, then I like the movie The Super. Remember the Super just came on recently again, and I like that because what the judge did was she sentenced him to house arrest in one of the apartments in this very building that was run down. And he said he couldn't fix up any of the other apartments in the building unless he he couldn't fix up his apartment unless he fixed up the other apartments in the building first. Okay? And if he didn't fix it up within 90 days, he was going to go to jail anyway. Okay? Yes, landlords can go to jail. That's right. They can get locked up for not fixing the house because it's a contract. Okay? It's a legal binding contract. When the landlord agrees to rent you an apartment, they're saying that I agree to rent you and I promise to provide you with a decent place to live. I promise not to harass you. I promise to let you stay there free and clear without being bothered by me. And if they enter into your premises illegally, honey, you can shoot them dead. I wouldn't suggest you doing it, but legally you have a right because they are in your house. And I don't care if you know them or not. You ain't got no business in here. You know what I mean? Unless I give you permission to come in here. You know what I mean? That's why I like to change my lock when I move into my if I'm renting from a landlord. I will change my lock. You know what I mean? I'm not going to just let you have access to here. And I'll let you know in very certain terms, if you come in my house again, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do whatever I can do to protect myself against you. I will not be harassed by you. What if I'm walking around my house naked and you bust in my door talking about you coming to fix something? You call me up and give me respect. You know what I mean? You don't come in my house when you get ready to come in my house. You don't come and harass me just because I'm not paying my rent on time. Look at the despicable conditions in this apartment. Look at the holes in the walls. Look at these broken windows. I got to put plastic. I got to put cardboard up on my windows, you know. And so there's a remedy, my dear brothers and sisters, for everything that you're going through. There's a remedy for everything, and there's a solution. Remember I told you at the beginning of the broadcast, how would you like to be able to have your landlord removed from active management of his own building that he bought and have you as the tenants take over the management of the building, bring it up to code compliance, and then buy it with the help of the city as a low-income co-op? Yes, it can be done. Yes, it can be done. That's right. These landlords don't believe how serious these penalties are. You know, how we're human beings. We deserve a decent place to live. We should not have to live in substandard conditions just because you're getting welfare, or just because you're on Social Security, you're on a fixed income, or because you're getting Section 8, or because of the color of your skin. You know what I mean? That could be another, he might not say, that out of his mouth, but, you're doing that. And if you can find evidence that he's renting nice apartments to the white people and raggedy apartments to the black people, you got a big old lawsuit, honey, and you won't need to rent no more. You can actually buy. So I want to thank you for joining me today for Real Estate, Religion, and You. And I was talking about my book, Tenants' Rights versus Slumlords, Win in Housing Court. Okay, you're going to win in housing court. It's a win-win situation, baby. You're going to get that landlord removed from managing his own building that he paid cash for, or that he got a mortgage for. There was a building that I used to live in. The city took it over because the landlord the manager refused to fix anything. And the city came and took it over. Thank God I moved out of there before they did. But the tenants upstairs, they were still there. And they ended up getting ousted out. And some of their things are still there. They ripped the floors up. But they boarded up the building. But the boards are off because there's squatters living in there. And some people are going in there, sleeping in there. And, whatever they're doing. It's summertime now. You don't need no heat in the summertime. You know what I mean? We should be reporting these to the thing there. But I just want to thank you again for joining me. Please join me next week where we'll be continuing this. And remember, come check me out at one of those libraries, and I'll be glad to help you out, honey. More than happy to help you. Holla at the sister, and see you next week.